Okay, for this section of the video, we're putting the canopy on and getting ready to start it, get the cutout lines and everything set up. You'll notice I taped this one, the canopy down. I also switched over to a second canopy. I wanted to have a little more material down here to come down to the bottom. If yours is cut so that it's in the middle there, that's fine. What you'd have to do is put a piece of aluminum flashing over it and screw it through the top, and then put your bolts through your slider down here so your aluminum comes down. That way you make sure you don't have any weak material down there or any way for that to blow off if you're trying to fly with the canopy open. And I will be putting that aluminum on the outside of this also to capture that, to make sure that there is enough meat in there, and we will be doing that step also, so you get to see that too. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the lines up here so that I know exactly where to put my my canopy windshield back on. Then I'm going to draw a line on the bottom of this canopy with pen from up front here all the way to the back of the first slider, and I am going to do it at the bottom of the rail. The center section, I'm going to actually draw that line right there on the top of the rail, because the middle piece will have to sit down and be bolted flush to the fuselage, bolted or screwed to the fuselage or glued to the fuselage, however you want to do it. And it has to sit on top of the guide rails so that the guide rails stick out slightly more than it, so your windshield can get past it. Okay, and then the third one, what's going to happen is the fuselage itself will get cut down to that rail, and that'll get cut off. So this whole section right here will be missing of the fuselage side, and the rail for the other one will come out and go in there, and then you'll see the angle iron slider that the inside one slides on. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to get those lines on, and I'll show you. Oh, okay. Here you guys can see the mark that I made for around the windshield. Now this windshield is not trimmed to where it's going to be permanently. That's just the cut line that I made, and that's just to reference where the windshield needs to be placed after it's separated from the canopy itself. Okay, and up here on the canopy, I don't know how well you can see this, but we have the lines on the canopy right there, and there is the stationary centerpiece line. Those are cut lines where they will be trimmed when they're cut off. But there's also in here little holes, 3 little holes on each slider, on each side. And what those are for is that is where the 256 bolts are going to go through and mount to the sliders inside the tracks. And there will be a piece of aluminum angle iron on here that's trimmed down on one side that will go through the slot in the tracks right here and press up against the aluminum on the inside. So the next step is going to be to actually separate at the end of the frame right here, at the end of the frame right here, at the end of the frame right there, and in between the frames right here, to separate all 5 sections of the canopy. And once we have that done, then we'll go ahead and start putting stiffeners in the leading edge of each one of the canopy sections. We'll have a stiffener in here, we'll have a stiffener in this one, we'll have one in here, and we'll have one in here. Now these stiffeners actually act as not only something to keep the canopy a little more rigid than so that it's not flopping around real bad, but it also acts as a wind dam. So as the wind comes over this windshield, it can't get underneath the canopy and try and lift the canopy off. And the same thing with each section thereafter. So that way, in the slipstream, will hold everything down nice and tight onto the top of onto the canopy. So the only time you may be in any kind of jeopardy of anything is if you open the canopy in flight. And what you would want to do is make sure you're down and dirty. You got your flaps down and you're flying slow when you open them up. You don't want to fly with this canopy set up at full throttle and flying like a bird on fire going through the air, because you probably will end up ripping canopy sections off if you do that. Here you can see the three separate sections of the forward part of the canopy. We have the windshield here, the first slider, and the center stationary piece. What we're going to do now that we have these three pieces separated, we're going to flatten out with the sanding bar the leading and trailing edges of the canopy sections, and we're also going to take a Dremel and remove the lip that curls in down inside here. It's kind of hard to show you right there. So we're going to take that lip off with the Dremel and a sanding drum so that it's flat, so that the aluminum leading edge from the piece behind it will tuck underneath of it, tuck underneath it here very nicely. So the next thing we'll do is get that taken care of, the sanding and the Dremel work, get that done. Then we'll start getting the aluminum flashing cut, and then I'll show you how I install that on one of the sections.